going to be completely honest. You know, when I first heard of the whole Hormesis low dose X-ray being beneficial, I was like, no way. Like, it's radiation. Come on, right? But then you read into it more, and then you think about it. You're like, wow, there's all these. But to think about it, just because we're not used to thinking about radiation this way, and to think about that it could actually give a beneficial effect, it makes you step back and say, hold on, like, I need to understand why this is. Interested in radiation exposure, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's necessary, this video is for you. Please, if you liked the video, if you got value from it, please hit the like button, hit that little thumbs up. It will help the video get to more people just like you who need to hear this information to get help. Subscribe to the channel for more videos. Make some comments in the comments section below. That helps the video as well. Ask me any questions. Ask us any questions that you might have, and we'll give you as much information as we possibly can. And thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to the Chiropractic Deep Dive podcast. This is the Upper Cervical Chiropractic Show. This is episode number 6. I'm Dr. Kevin Leach, and I am here once again with Dr. Tyler Evans. How are you, sir?
Good to see you again, Kevin.
All right, good to see you, my friend. So this episode's research review is titled Subjecting Radiologic Imaging to the Linear No Threshold Hypothesis, a non-sequitur of non-trivial proportion, by Jeffry A. Seigel, Charles W. Pennington, and Bill Sachs. And this is published in the Journal of Nuclear Medicine. Now, I did want to say that this research is about radiation exposure, and it isn't necessarily about upper cervical chiropractic. However, since we use radiographic imaging to evaluate the upper cervical spine, this research can be applied to what we do. So, Dr. Evans, Tyler, if you would, just maybe give us your overview.
Yeah, absolutely. This paper came across my desk a few years ago when I started to ask around about radiation dose and concerns for patients, because we brought in a technology called cone beam CT, and that is a type of radiological imaging that's slightly different from a standard CT scan, and also slightly different from an X-ray series. It's kind of a hybrid of the two. And I wanted to, make myself knowledgeable on dose if I was going to be using that technology, and be able to explain what the dose is and how it affects patients, and if it's worth the cost to benefit ratio to do that cone beam CT imaging. And in the upper cervical community, one of our standard procedures is to identify if there's an upper cervical misalignment, and in 3 dimensions, whether that be by taking 2D x-rays and then creating a 3D image from different directions, or by cone beam CT or MRI or CT, coming up with a way to correct the upper cervical spine, specifically the best way possible for each and every patient. And so imaging is, in our part of the profession, it's what allows us to do our job. And in the craniocervical junction, you don't want to be messing around up there. You want somebody to be able to see in many different directions how that vertebra is rotated, to get the pressure off of the brainstem, to allow fluid flow to come back, to allow the nerves to work as best as possible. So advanced imaging is it's a daily part of our job. And this cone beam CT technology is kind of an advancement in the world of dentistry, and we brought it into the chiropractic world, and I wanted to understand it. So this paper came across my desk, and it's a lot. There's a lot in this paper. It's a lot of math. It's a lot of new concepts for someone that's not really interested in dose or in radiation health physics. But man, oh man, did it get me fired up and got me down the rabbit hole of this topic, because there have been a few situations in the last 100 years that have created a global understanding of how radiation affects the human body. And some of them have been well studied. And over time, the science has actually changed a little bit because our science has gotten better. The data has gotten a little more clear because our science has gotten better. Because in the 1940s, it's not fun to talk about this. I mean, these situations where, it's like anything. When you do a study on humans, you don't want to be hurting people. And so there's no way to get IRB board approval to do radiation dose to people and see what happens. It's not like they do that. But what we do is we observe what happened in real life to people that got exposed to large doses of radiation. So in 1945, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they were two of the largest population bases that were exposed to large doses of radiation. And at their epicenter, those areas were very highly afflicted. I mean, the mortality rate was very high. But out on the edges of that, we had low dose scenarios. So the further away someone was from the center of the blast, there was this low dose scenario that could be studied because these people survived, and some of them are still alive today. They're still producing, so what's called the lifespan study in Japan, that they are connected with the United States. And I just read a paper about this the other day. They're producing papers all the time. And every year they study these people, or every year or two, they study these people. They study their blood. They study everything about them. And they study cancer rates. And what they've seen is that in some of these people, not only have they not had cancer, carcinogenic effects, or they've actually had a protective effect against things like cancer, some of the problems that arise that we thought would happen. But it's not. The science back then, when it first was studied, it was kind of all together, and we just thought radiation is bad. But what we're starting to realize as we study these people through their whole life is that radiation doesn't actually do at low doses what we thought that it does at high doses. And so this whole thing, I mean, this is a huge, long, drawn out explanation, but the whole thing comes down to this guy, Hermann Joseph Mueller. In 1945, he started a study where he studied Drosophila flies, and he x-rayed them, and he saw changes in these fly colors. So the Drosophila fly mutated genes, and they saw changes in the colors. Well, what he didn't know, and what the literature wasn't able to do, was to reproduce that over time in a way that showed that low dose amounts, under 100 millisieverts. So we're going to talk about sieverts and millisieverts and microsieverts in just a second, but under 100 of these millisieverts, there was no change. But he just assumed that there would be. So what they created was a chart that's called the linear no threshold. So linear, meaning a straight line, and no threshold under which it is safe to use radiation, or that radiation is safe for the human body. So basically what they determined is that when you go this way with dose from 0 to 1,000, and when you go up this way for risk for cancer, 0 to 1,000. Every step you take, if you increase dose, you increase the risk of cancer over time. But that has never been found to be true, at least not with plausible, repeatable research. And they've got these huge lifespan studies. They've got it from, the Hiroshima, Nagasaki. They've got it from other things like Chernobyl. And now they're studying Fukushima. So unfortunately, radiological imaging gets thrown in this mix with nuclear energy and nuclear weapons. And it's just not the same. We're not talking about the same amounts of dose. We're talking about fractions of dose comparatively. So when we look at like a daily dose, so we humans evolved in a low dose bath of radiation. We've had it, and we needed the ozone and the electromagnetic field to protect us, and humans evolved in a time on the planet when we had that protection. However, we've always had a bit of that from the universe, from the stars in the sky, from the sun, from radon in the ground. Bananas they have some radioactive element to them, and the potassium. A lot of the elements have radioactivity. So what we've studied and found is that on a daily basis, you're going to get 10, roughly in the United States, you're going to get on average 10 microsieverts. You and I, on a day from start to finish, we're going to get about 10 microsieverts. Over a year, we're going to get roughly 3 millisieverts. So you take 10, multiply it by 365. What do you get? Roughly 3.65. It depends on where you live. Now, if you live up high in Colorado, if you live in Pakistan in the mountains, there are actually a couple of places where that's actually like much higher, like 260 millisieverts for an annual dose versus the 3 that we get on average here in the United States. So there are places where they're getting even above the 100 millisieverts with no negative effects, at least that it can be studied and can be found. And they've studied them. And those are in this paper. So what this comes down to is we want to get the best result for our patients. Taking an X-ray is a very low dose scenario. We're talking if one lateral X-ray film, and I have the paper, it's called Cervical and Lumbar Spine Radiography Dose, something to that effect. I have it, and we can go over that in the future, but it's roughly 10 millisieverts for a lateral X-ray, and maybe 20 or 30 if you go through the skull. So we're talking about
milli or microsieverts.
Sorry, micro. I apologize. My bad. So we're talking about roughly 50 to 100 microsieverts for a cervical X-ray series in an upper cervical chiropractic office without any filters or, collimation, things like that, which you do. I know you do in your office. We do as well. And so the dose is very small. We're talking about fractions of anything that's ever caused a negative problem. Now, that's not to say that there's no risk. There's always when you hop in your car and you drive to work every day, there is a risk of you getting into an accident. It's very small, but we all take that risk every day. And so when it comes to taking X-rays and seeing the problems in the cervical spine or in the spine, this risk it's tiny. It is magnificently small. And the benefit that you can get of having a clear brainstem, a clear nervous system, outweighs that risk, in my opinion, clinically, from what I've seen. So that's
that's what the paper is saying too.
Yeah.
That's their whole, these, just to make it clear, these guys, nuclear physicists may not even know about upper cervical, but they're still they're still advocating the fact that this theory, this hypothesis
Right.
that's never been shown below the 100 millisieverts, that it's never been shown to be true, should not be taken into consideration for the ALARA, right? The as low as
It's
reasonably
reasonably achievable.
achievable,
Yep.
meaning that healthcare has these directives on you try to use as low as possible to get your imaging. Well, that tends to lead to not exposing the patient enough to get quality information, which
Or
could,
not at all.
or not at all. Exactly. Saying, oh no, let's bypass that, right? So they're saying the
It's not
risk.
evidence. It's not evidence based.
Right. Right. So the conclusion is that this policy by Bear,
Beer.
BEIR,
Yep. Beer. Yep.
Bear, that you should do as little as possible is not, it's more dangerous to do that because of missing something on imaging or getting quality in imaging than it is to not do it because of a false hypothesis that's never been proven that low dose radiation has negative effects, which again has never been shown, and a lot of studies actually show that there could be potential benefit to it. And
Correct.
I'm gonna be completely honest. You know, when I first heard of the whole hormesis low dose X-ray being beneficial, I was like no way. Like, it's radiation. Come on, right? But then you read into it more, and then you think about it. You're like, wow, there's all these analogies that you can think of. Okay, so if I don't drink enough water, not good. If I drink plenty of water, good. If I drink too much water, I could actually die. So there's a threshold of how much water. Same thing when you go out and you get some sun. You need some sun for vitamin D. You get too much and you burn, you could get skin cancer, right? There's all these analogies that you can come by, but to think about it, just because we're not used to thinking about radiation this way, and to think about that it could actually give a beneficial effect, it makes you step back and say, hold on, like, I need to understand why this is. So
Yeah.
it's
And
interesting to
hormesis is,
think about.
yeah, and hormesis is the concept there that we're talking about, that, you know, when a X-ray, an electron comes into a cell, that it may go through the DNA and change or alter a DNA sequence. The reality is that's happening all the time, from the sun, the stars, from the radon in the ground, from the interactions that we have with the chemicals in our environment. And this idea, it's a slippery slope where, okay, you know, we don't want any okay, well, go live in a box under a ground for the rest of your life and there's still radiation that goes through the ground. If you live in a cave, there's still some radiation that comes through. So, you know, there's a fine line where, yes, there's an important relationship there, but under 100 millisieverts, you know, it's just not been observed. And there may be, we need to study it more, but there may be a protective factor called hormesis, and that might actually be a good thing for the first you know, few 20 or 30 years of X-ray. They used to actually, medical offices used to actually offer X-rays for therapeutic benefit. And that's what so these nuclear physicists, some of these health physicists, what they actually do, they use radiation to help the body. Chemotherapy has been shown in low doses to actually support healing, right? Obviously in high doses, it kills cells and it's not good, but in low doses, it has been shown to help cell regeneration, cell regrowth. So yeah, there's protective factors there, that it's a nuanced conversation, and you can't just say blanket statement, oh, can't do that, it's bad. That's not what the science says, you know. And this is all stuff that you know, back in the early days, we didn't have the ability to do this science, to study this. Now we do. Here's the data. You know, we need to change our perceptions.
Will you go into the what is it? The beer?
Yeah, beer 7. Yeah,
The beer committee, and then the Alara and the possible financial, you know, ties to that, or do you want me to go over that?
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, I'm just looking here. You know, the beer 7. So beer, the biological, what is it? Biological effects of ionizing radiation. They've been doing this since World War II. Since the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that's where beer came from. It was, I believe it's the United States under the Academy of Sciences. So the Academy of Sciences is like our WHO in the United States, and they work under a similar concept as the World Health Organization. They're putting you know, government dollars towards science, right? And so they're trying to study things that scientists in one little lab can't study, right? And so this Beer 7 is the 7th time they have recollected data, studied it, and then came out with their I believe the report is something like 500 or 1,000 pages. And unfortunately, I have read through it before. It's painful, but it's good. And it's got some good stuff in it. And actually, there are some places and this paper doesn't, maybe it does show where, but it's lost in here to me. But there are places where Beer 7 does say, hey, some of the new data from the lifespan study is suggesting that there may be a protective factor. There may be, there might not be good grounds for this linear no threshold, but right now we don't have enough information, and we want to continue to go off of this old theory, this hypothesis that Hermann Joseph Mueller created in 1945. And just stay with it, because they are worried. I mean, obviously they're taking into account the world's radiation protection standards. And that's where we get our radiation protection standards for all of our health safety workers, for, you know, all of our doctors and our medical offices, of every nuclear plants. Everybody follows these rules based on these people. So they're trying to be conservative. And I get that. But Alara, right? So this Alara concept, it comes in, and, you know, it comes into play where that might actually reduce the ability of a doctor to get helpful information where the data doesn't show that you shouldn't. So if you want to go into some of the more details on that, please go ahead, because I see what you're pointing at there.
That's pretty much the basics of what I wanted to cover. So where do you think, you know, when patients come in, I'm sure you've had them as well, and they'll ask, hey, do you have to do x-rays? Can we do this without x-rays? And I say, unfortunately not. They're absolutely essential.
Right.
And even before this paper, I would say the benefits greatly outweigh the potential risk from the very low dose of x-rays that you're getting. Where are patients getting their information from in regards to radiation?
Well,
bad.
Well, that's a little bit of a rabbit hole, and I'll
Overview.
step my toes into the pond.
All right.
Because this is something I go deep into the rabbit hole on late into the night sometimes. So it goes back to, you know, Hermann Joseph Mueller, but then what happened was in the 1950s and 60s, actually Sierra Club, and I was a major supporter for Sierra Club for a long time, and this gets into a bunch of other stuff, but Sierra Club decided they wanted to take down nuclear power, and they wanted to destroy it and never have it surface again on the planet. So they created some propaganda and said things that were not scientific about nuclear power, and the nuclear power industry did not have the science on what their plants were producing in terms of community and regions. And that's been shown to all, it's all been laid out. There's a couple of guys that do TED. One of my favorite guys he does a TED talk, Michael, I forget his last name. He ran for governor of California a couple of years back. But he had a big stance on nuclear power. He's trying to bring nuclear power back because our fears are unwarranted. There's just, in the United States, there's never been a death from nuclear energy from fallout. Just hasn't. And so there's all these kind of propaganda situations that have happened to close out nuclear energy. Obviously, nuclear weapons are not good. Nuclear deterrent is important for, you know, fending our country. However, the nuclear arms race in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s was a terrible thing, and obviously we need to stop that. So the nuclear weapons part of it gets wrapped up into it, and people see these explosions of the nuclear weapons and they think, you know, you see those big mushroom clouds, and they think that's the same thing, and it's not. And there have been movies like the China Syndrome. This happened in the 50s and 60s or actually it came out in the 70s, but this was the Sierra Club's move to destroy nuclear energy in California. And it was done by a bunch of actors that were part of the remove nuclear industry movement. And they literally made a movie that's set, and it's actually kind of not, it's not cool, but they said that, you know, this nuclear power plant in California literally burnt a hole through the center of the earth because it melted down and melted through to China. That's why it's called the China Syndrome. False. If you put a hole through the earth, it doesn't go to China. I'm sorry, from California, it doesn't go to China. So, you know, there's just been a lot of like false science. It's fake science. It's not real. It's never been proven in that way, in that shape or form, you know. And so there's just this constant propaganda. And yes, people are afraid of the serious effects of nuclear weapons, and blame that on the government. Don't blame that on, you know, Einstein and the people that created the nuclear energy movement in the beginning, and the people that use nuclear medicine, or the people that use radiation techniques to get imaging. There's a lot of good science that has come about because of that technology. I mean, most of the advances that we've had in the last 100 years have come from the ability to split atoms and develop this energy into useful forms. And if you want to throw that away, that's going to really hurt our society and set us back technologically speaking. I mean, this is a podium I'll get up on and I'll talk about all day long because I get excited about it. But there's just been so much propaganda it's fake science, that you know, radiological imaging's bad, and you know, that some of these ideas are they're just not true.
So the short answer to my question, you would say that patients know that X-rays have radiation. They
Yes.
think about radiation from a nuclear bomb.
Yes.
They think about nuclear energy and Fukushima, and they think bad, and they just correlate
Chernobyl.
both of them as being bad.
Right.
Pretty much.
Right.
Yeah. Got it.
Bad. You know, you see that big yellow and black symbol, and bad. You know, it's like fear.
Yeah.
Fear. It's called radiophobia.
Sure.
It's called radiophobia.
We never explained the non sequitur.
Oh yeah, so non sequitur, I love that. I actually love the title of this paper because it's witty and it's intelligent. But a non sequitur is a conclusion or statement that does not logically follow from the previous argument or statement, meaning that the linear non-threshold hypothesis is a hypothesis and there's no science or data to back it up, so that it doesn't logically follow, right? Like, doesn't make sense.
Circular reasoning.
Yes.
Coming to a conclusion based off of separate evidence without empirical data to prove it.
It's a fun title. I like it.
Got it. All right, my man. Anything else? Any other highlighted points? Conclusions?
Mm, no, I mean, I think that pretty much covers it. I'll definitely step off of the
No,
the talking.
it's fine. This is supposed to be a conversation, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So, so we can, for the, patients watching this, doctors watching this, they're thinking about radiation. They need to understand that radiation, when in healthcare, in low doses,
yeah.
are non-harming. That's what the evidence is showing, that there's
Yep.
no harm and that there's actually potential benefit. Now, we're not going to be doing it for the benefit, but
No.
to not be afraid of doing imaging when indicated.
Correct.
Right.
There's
And that,
it's there's this movement in chiropractic to say that it's not evidence based to shoot X-rays on neck pain or low back pain. There are many patients. I have taken cone beam CTs on people that come in and they don't have an atlas. There's no bone there. It's just cartilage in the spinal cord.
right.
If I didn't know that going in, that's not good.
Exactly.
That's a great way to get a malpractice lawsuit.
Exactly.
Like, come on.
Yeah. So
So
not only is this not harmful, it's extremely beneficial to know exactly what we're working with and we're adjusting, and also to indicate if there's anything else that needs to be referred out to a medical doctor, oncologist, neurologist, anything like that. Right?
Correct.
So the conclusion for this paper and the evidence is that imaging is okay and absolutely necessary when indicated.
Yes.
It's safe.
When indicated, after obviously a series of tests to indicate and confirm, yes, there's a misalignment, we should investigate further, you're a good candidate for care. Now let's move forward with x-rays. We don't just go in and x-ray people first thing. We do testing. We rule in or out the idea that, yeah, there might be a misalignment that's affecting your body in a way that we think we can help with. Let's move forward with some imaging. It's safe.
Perfect.
Right? Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Anything else, my good man?
No, I think that's it. That's a good one.
Awesome.
I like that paper. It's a good one.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time, Tyler. Appreciate it as usual. Viewers, listeners, like, subscribe, comment, please. It really helps out the videos. It helps us get our message out. It helps us help more people like you. So please, if you found some value, support us in that way if you can. And until next time, we will see you. We will see you then.
Yes,
Take
we
care.
will.
See ya.
Take care.